This week on RSBANDB Update, we recap 2018's PvM updates, assess the state of PvM today, and lay out the direction of PvM for 2019. Hard questions will be asked and answered. Is magic too strong? And if so, how can it be fixed? Also, the latest cryptocurrency scheme from Razer. This is RSBANDB Update, episode 702, recorded Thursday, December 13th, 2018. The PvM Horizon. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for RSBANDB Update. This week's patch week, once again, in the lands of RuneScape, though the Christmas Advent calendar is ticking on. I don't know if we should talk about the Advent calendar.
I mean, it's the same every year, right?
Yeah. I for some reason, expected more.
Did you expect more last year, too?
No. I just expected them to change it this year.
Then they're probably doing a good job, because have you ever had, like, the real Advent calendar? It's like a tiny little piece of chocolate.
Yeah.
It's just a little...
Yeah, and...
disappointing.
And, you know, I say this to people. I got a lucky Armadillo helmet. I'm 99 defense. That's absolutely useless to me today.
I got a lucky Guthin's plate skirt. Is it plate skirt? Chain skirt? Whatever the legs are.
Okay. And still useless to you, right?
Oh, yeah, completely.
And, you know, I tell people this when they complain about the RS Advent calendar. At least you don't need to pay for the Advent calendar in RuneScape. You know why? Because if you look at World of Tanks, another game that I play somewhat frequently, if you look at World of Tanks, they have an Advent calendar. And this is a Russian game company, and the idea behind the World of Tanks Russian Advent calendar, you need to pay for what's on offer in each day of the Advent calendar.
Nice.
Like today, if you wanted to, you could buy this Tier 8 premium Polish heavy tank for $56.61.
$56?
That's like a year membership.
Holy
God.
shit.
I guess not anymore. But
And
it's Polish? What is it, a horse with a lance?
No, they did some extrapolation, but it's a high-tier one, so it's actually okay. But the bottom
two
tier,
lances.
but the bottom-tiered Polish ones, I mean, are like that. Yeah, but, you know, I always say that about the RuneScape Advent calendar, that, you know, it's there, and it's something that people could complain they don't get more out of, but we got to remember that it's not World of Tanks, and you're not needing to pay to get something out of it.
Yeah, at least you don't have to pay.
All right,
Yep.
So basically what we're going to do this week, because it's patch week, is we're going to run through the patch notes that make a splash this week, and aside from that, we're going to have a look at what 2018 and PvM had to offer, and that's why David's here. We're just going to have a bit of a brief rundown and to have a look back at the PvM aspects of 2018. And after that, listener questions, tech news, and away we go. So let's just jump right into these patch notes, and I figured we'd open this one up with something that, you know, is typical in RuneScape fashion, that, you know, it doesn't normally get enough coverage, and people, you know, might forget about these little things like this. But this week, minor graphical issue with a manhole in West Ardoyan was fixed. And, you know, just wanted to highlight this one because it's the level of detail that goes into producing RuneScape, I feel. So I got a chuckle when I saw that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. How old is West Ardoyan? Like it's
2002.
Wow.
Yeah. So something obviously changed.
Might have just leave it alone. Jeez.
But now, moving on to the Tyrannin Quiver, keybinds 1 to 8 have been added for the Tyrannin Quiver's teleport interface.
Ooh, that's cool for the or is it mushroom patches? You get to that?
Mushroom patch. Okay, yeah. I still got to do those elf tasks.
It's also nice for clues.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you do elite clues or master, I'm not sure if there are master clues out there, but elite clues, there's the Tyrannin Quiver scan clue, and it was always annoying to run out of. I guess I'm jumping the gun on the next one, but that a lot of those places you can now teleport an unlimited number of times, whereas before there was a limit. I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, let's do that one right now. And basically what they've done with this is that many of the options in the Terran and Quiver teleports can be used an unlimited amount of times. And they do take careful note to say that the death altar is still limited to 5 times a day. So, the Make X window will no longer list skilling outfit pieces after its full set has been completed. I saw some farming outfits on there. I was wondering what exactly was happening with that. So, that was a bit of an interesting invention bug. They added a bank healing area to Death's office to allow passive healing over time. Now,
I was thinking about something, Shane. I heard you pull that one out. It was on the bite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you show up in Death's office, most of the time it's because you died, right?
And you should have full HP.
Yes, right?
Yeah, and I think I misspoke about that on the bite. So
I was wondering about it. I mean, why did they add that when you're
because the
dead?
Drainer Bank is technically just to the north. Or to the south.
Right. Huh. Okay.
And this is actually one of the ones that they led their tweet presenting the update with this week, that they added this bank aura to the Death's office.
Notice David's like, I don't even know where Death's office is, man.
Oh, he's died many times before. I've seen it.
Oh, I die a lot. I die so much. People don't realize how many deaths there are.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about.
I remember that time. I remember when you got killed. That you got one hit KO'd at the second boss in Syria, or Temple of Amnesia.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was a good time.
Glad you remembered, Shane.
No, I mean, wasn't this when you could still be hit by attacks when you weren't inside the thing?
Yep.
And so we teleported out because someone died, and then I teleported back quickly. But someone was still in the fight, and I just died as I spawned. So I spawned next to the boss, but it was doing a spec, and so I did not fully materialize in the game before I was already dead because because attacks weren't limited to the arena. It would just kill you if you were outside of the fight too.
Oh, good times, but more on ED1 after.
Yeah, they fixed that. So
yeah, they did. They fixed all the stuff about those attacks leaking out. The tool belt button on the equipped items window now has shortcuts to stored tools' individual settings via right-click options. I like this for PC users. And, you have to right-click on down there to activate auras and whatnot. So it's feasible you're going to right-click on the tool belt option. But how are people playing on mobile going to know about all these right-click context menus? It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, that's...
Because to access a right-click context menu on mobile, it's a press and hold.
Mm-hmm.
And considering where those buttons are, I don't know who's going to click that on mobile. So, and, I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade or anything like that. I just would like to know that when a patch is put in like this from the Ninja team with right-click options, is the future of RuneScape Mobile taken into account when adding that?
I think it must be, right?
You would hope so, right?
Yeah, haven't a lot of the recent interface changes been precisely to make them more mobile-friendly, right? So it would seem strange to me if they didn't at least consider. I mean, I guess they could be wrong about the usability, but someone must be thinking about it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just a general mobile usability thing, because if you think about it, how many of our smartphone operating systems have right-click context menus? Like, Apple has what's called 3D Touch on the iPhone 6S and up, where if you press harder on your screen, you'll get a right-click context menu on a home icon. But
I didn't even know that.
Right? Yeah.
I had no idea.
So if you take your phone and you press extra hard on your messages icon, you'll get a context menu giving you the option of new message and the 3 most people you've communicated with, 3 most recent. Same thing with the phone. You'll be able to create a new contact, view most recent call, and access your favorites. Safari will take you to places like your reading list, your bookmarks, and allow you to open up a new tab. Twitter will allow you to write a new direct message, write a new tweet, or scan a QR code or search. And see, this is something that Apple has done away with on the iPhone XR, the haptic feedback screen. And it's something that app developers have been designed to take advantage of, or told to take advantage of when they're writing their apps. Another good example of this is if you're reading your email and you press and hold on an email message, you can get a preview of that message. And see, what these extra interactions that turn out effectively to be right-click context menu interacts being used within iOS are being used for, is they're just being used as alternate ways to access that functionality. Whereas, I mean, I don't know. I guess you would need to go into the tool belt settings and click the cog in there if you wanted to do that, which is, I mean, still it's an alternate way away, but no one is going to know that this is here unless they right-click and discover it beyond reading these patch notes. And I don't know. I'm getting into the realm of user interaction design here, and in general, I'm just not a fan of right-click context menus. But maybe that's because I'm a Mac user, and Macs are designed to be used without right-click. So, anyways, I'll take that as a cue to move on from this.
Yeah, I mean, I was just playing around with it while you were talking about it. I never knew. I like can't think of why I'd use it anyways, but I guess I could if I wanted to.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a feature that once you start playing around with and you learn, you become accustomed to it. Like one of my favorite ones to do is if I'm just trying to see if a Google search result is good enough, you can press and hold on a link in Safari and you'll get a preview of the page. And if you don't want to commit to it, you just let go. But if you do want to commit to it, you just press even harder. So
interesting.
Yeah. Anyone with a success and up can do that. Now, moving on, Ethereal Heads, Blood, Death, Law, and Infinity can now access the Wicked Hood's teleport latest Warn option.
Okay.
Not much to write home about there.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to decanting potions, Bob Barter has a specific dose. Previously, you'd have to type in the number of what you're wanting to decant to, and it's now a menu choice as opposed to how it was previously. And, you know, this cleans up the interface a lot. There's no reason to allow people to enter in a number when it can either be 1, 2, 3, or 4. And once again, if you're on mobile, this is actually a good usability change for mobile, because that way then you don't need to pop up the keyboard and you just present something on screen. So that's what this
see, Jagex giveth and Jagex taketh away.
That's right. The follower details window will now list stored summoning scrolls as well as those stored in the inventory. Does anybody use summoning scrolls?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay, so this will be useful to you then.
What is it exactly?
The follower details window now shows how many scrolls are stored with that familiar.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I actually noticed that today, and I think that... Okay, so I noticed that today, and when I looked at it, I said, wow, I never noticed that's been there the whole time. That's so useful. So I guess I was not noticing. It just was a new feature.
Yeah.
So there we go. Yeah, that's cool. It's good.
Sarin spirits will no longer spawn and immediately disappear when performing actions like picking arc mushrooms or deep sea fishing.
Well, that's good with this weekend coming up.
Yeah, I agree. There had been talk of, if you're on the arc or fishing, that these would disappear, and maybe people weren't paying attention enough, but this was actually the problem with this. Now, continuing from the jewelry update, using the Max Guild teleport options from Grace of the Elves uncovered an issue that never previously presented itself. So as a safety, we've added a quick teleport animation to Grace of the Elves when using Max Guild portal teleports.
I just did that, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what exactly this issue could have been, but I can't think of anything. Sirion couldn't think of anything.
It must be somewhat serious if they won't even put it in the patch notes.
Yeah.
Causes you to lose your party hat.
That would have been something. Now, here's one for the history books. Player moderators should no longer have the possibility to accidentally toggle the temporary mute option when reporting a player within the report a player system.
I'm sure it was accidental.
That was fun, that PMod special, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a blast.
I agree. And of course, what we're talking about is one of our monthly bits that we did regarding player moderators, which you can listen to on patreon.com/RSBANDB. Now, an option to turn on legacy map icons has been added to the miscellaneous legacy modes section of gameplay settings. So back in 2014, they changed the world map icons, and now you can decide if you're going to have the old icons or the new icons. Previously, the icons would only change if you were using the legacy UI skin, but now they've given people the choice to change them regardless. Do you guys see yourself using this?
You know, I hate to be hypocritical because I usually don't have too big of a problem with toggle escape, but I'm always like, it's too much. But this one, I probably will do because I still like the old ones.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes me part of the problem, right?
And no, it's not part of the problem. And here's the issue with these icons, why the old ones are, in my opinion, better, is because the border on the new icons, well, the 2014 icons, is too thick. And it's also too light compared to what's inside the icon.
Yeah, I don't know. I just felt like they were easier to see.
Right. They're
before.
easier to tell from a glance and whatnot. And I mean, we've all looked. We've had 4 years to look at this map to learn what all the icons are. Right. We should have been able to pick up what they all are. But the issue is that when you have an icon, something that is so small and for all intents and purposes, no bigger than 16 by 16 pixels, it's very, very hard to design a pictograph, a graphic for something that small. And the benefit of the old icons is that they're just so much simpler. And in general, when you're having an icon that is so small like that it fits in 16 by 16 pixels, the simpler the icon is, the easier it's going to be for someone to determine what it is. Whereas if you try and go all elaborate and add all kinds of shading to the icons and whatnot, and have the border like we have right now, it becomes a lot harder to read, I think. So
yeah, I would agree.
And this isn't just because we like the way they look. I think that these icons on their own are better for the case of the world map.
Yeah, I just think they're easier to see.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, and I mean, you would be one to definitely say on what's easy to see and what's easy not to see in RuneScape.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's two of us who have turned that on. Then I expected it would have only been me, but I guess that makes sense, Tanis. So that's good. Mm-hmm. David, which ones are you using? You gonna use the standard or the old ones?
I've not switched to the new ones. So I've not looked at what it's like. I actually have not opened the world map recently.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, I guess.
I don't know.
I mean, if
I suppose
if I'm looking for mining sites and whatnot, I'll definitely use the world map. And I think we once had a point where you could know where everything was in game, but now there's just too much, and you might as well use the map. So.
Yeah. Typically, I don't need a map to go from the max guild to the max guild portal, so that's pretty much all the traveling I do.
Okay.
So, yeah.
They have removed mobilizing armies from the world list interface that previously had them listed as an activity, and they've also decided to change the following worlds this week, and those are Worlds 25, that used to be mobilizing armies. It's now community farming training. World 58 used to be the blast furnace. It has become community smithing training. World 71 for the Lava Flow Mine and Penguin Hide and Seek has just become used for the Lava Flow Mine. World 76 for mobilizing armies is now community summoning training. World 79 for Soul Wars is now community divination training. Community smithing training on World 83 has become a living rock cavern world. World 84 for living rock caverns has become for portable skilling, and I think that is the de facto portable world, right? 84?
Yeah.
For most of them, yeah.
Okay.
The ranges were on 99.
Huh.
I know that.
Yeah, they use World 100 is commonly used also.
All right.
But yeah, that's the main one.
Shades of Morden has become an elite dungeon world on World 88. World 91 for the Mage Training Arena has become the world for Heist. World 100 group questing has become used for treasure trails. And World 138 for the minigame Spotlight is now a Great Orb project world. So those are those changes there.
So something interesting to me is this marks one of the few times that I remember where like a treasure hunter item is now a designated activity in the world list in terms of the portables, right? So that's treasure hunter only, isn't it? And so now it's an officially listed world activity is a thing you get off of treasure hunter, which I find interesting.
Yeah, that's correct.
But they're tradable, I think.
Yeah, they are on the GE.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course they are. But, you know, they've still come... That's still directly where they come from.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, I think what we can see with this is that most mini games have just been, hey, it's minigame Spotlight week. Join these mini games on, whichever world you're on, and there will hopefully be people there to play them. Because I don't think we're at the point where you can join, Soul Wars on World 66 and be matched with people on 76. So.
No, I don't think so.
No. All right. That's the patch notes for this week. As we said, not much to write home about this week in terms of patch notes. So we're going to talk a little bit about PvM. Now, David, how long have you been PvMing? Let's just look at it this way.
I started PvMing super actively December 2014. That's when I first started learning Araxor.
Okay.
And yeah, I think December 2014 is correct. Is that the December after Prifddinas was released?
Yes, because Prif in its full came out in November of 14.
Right. Yeah. So I remember coming back to play RS3 for the first time around then, and I think I really started doing PvM December of that year. Or maybe it was December of 2015, actually. Maybe it was 1 year after that.
So
when was Invention released? That was 2016?
That was 2016.
Okay, so I'd say December of 2015 is when I really started doing high-level PvM.
All right.
Yeah,
so
2014.
Now, compare in your mind and maybe let people know, we effectively had three main big combat boss-type updates this year. We had Solak, Elite Dungeon 1, and Elite Dungeon 2. Now, where would you say 2018 ranks in terms of other PvM years that we've had?
I don't think it's been particularly good. I think there's a reason why I've started spending a lot of time playing old school, and a lot of other high-level PvMers have done that, because it seems like this year has been maybe the biggest down year that I can remember in terms of PvM updates. So it's a little unfortunate because Solak is very good, and so I don't want to discount that because I think it's a very solid update. But I think it's been one of the worst years in terms of overall stuff. There seems to be a lot less engaging content. Although I think that for many people, Elite Dungeons was fantastic. It wasn't really designated for people like me, and I'm not a huge fan of them, but as far as I'm concerned, the only PvM updates this year that were relevant to me were Solak and the melee abilities that were tradable in the Grand Exchange that you got from Elite Dungeon 2.
Okay. So, we first had you on the show when Solak came out back in May, and, there was lots of discussion about that boss, whether it was too hard, and, is it, if it's at the cap of what the players are capable of, or is it at the cap of what the equipment in-game is capable of, and whatnot. Now, I don't know. We really haven't chatted about this since we covered Solak on its release. Would you say that people have got duoing or even taking the full team to Solak out down to a science?
Yeah, kills are pretty much perfect now, which is to be expected. I think that when I came on the show, it was still extremely hard because people weren't familiar with mechanics. But as these things tend to go, people have figured out the best methods. And so 7-man is now a hybrid of magic and melee because you can take advantage of Sunshine, alternating Sunshine and Berserk. And so my preset for 7-man Solak is 2 brews and 1 soup. And that's all the food and typically I don't use any of it. And then for duo, if I'm going with someone who has a lot of experience, I bring more summoning flasks than food items because you can pretty much do it without food, or maybe 1 brew or 2 brews if things go poorly for you.
All right.
And kills have gotten very fast and quite successful. I think most duo and 7-man are both like between 5 and 6 kills an hour, depending on how good you are.
Now, I know when we talked about Solak when it first came out, you said that you liked the update, and it was a good example of PvM in game and the like. Now, would you say, looking back on Solak and its release, that it's probably near the top end of what Jagex should do? Obviously, you PvMers have become comfortable with it at this point in time.
So that's an interesting question because I think on release, if you had asked me within the first couple of weeks, I would have said yes. But just because of how things go, once you figure out how to do things correctly, there's not a whole lot about Solak that's dynamic or changing. So I would say that Solak is interesting because to compare it to the boss it's most similar to, Virago, it has a much more difficult learning curve in the sense that it's much harder to just jump in and start because everyone has a more or less equal responsibility towards the kill's success, which is not the case for some other team bosses. You can kind of like ease your way into it. But it seems to me like there's a more limited upside because of how exact all of the rotations are, how exact the order of mechanics are. There's nothing dynamic, if that makes sense. So it seems like there's a limited ability to really like push things forward to make it become even more perfect. So it seems less perfectible.
Okay, so in other words, it has a low skill cap, and once you've figured it out, you've effectively figured it out.
Right, but I think it has a much higher degree of difficulty to learn.
Right, so a low skill cap but a high skill floor then.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to describe it. And so I'm very happy with it overall. I think it's good. It's good in the sense that it brings little to no skilling resources into the game compared to God Wars Dungeon 2 or Telos. It's like a drop in the bucket. Almost all the money comes from the big rare items, the 3 big drops that it has, the 2 crossbows and the grimoire. And so I like that. But yeah, to me, it would be a shame if this ends up being the hardest things get. From listening to them talk at RuneFest, it seems like this, along with 1K and Rage at Telos, is about as far as they're willing to push things.
Yeah, that's the sense that I got too.
Weapons get higher. So I think for a small number of people, that's pretty disappointing. Like, I think we could handle more. I think we could get into things that are more difficult. Like, I don't remember RuneFest. I think it was 2 RuneFests ago now that ModPie. Yeah, it was 2 RuneFests ago now. ModPie referenced his idea for this demon boss, Hostilius, I think was the name.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that sounded absolutely bonkers to me in terms of difficulty. So I think we could handle a lot more. But is it worthwhile to develop that kind of time to a boss that only caters to a tiny percentage of the player
1%.
base? Like maybe it's just not at this point worth it anymore. So right. I don't know.
Now, I know we talked about this in patch notes and whatnot. After Solak was released, and that's the changes to the Ancient Grimoire pages, do you think people would be fighting Solak if not for that change?
No. Well, maybe if you genuinely really enjoyed it, right? Because RuneScape at the end of the day is still about having fun. So if you think the boss is really fun, you have friends you love going with, sure. But I do not think that there would be a nearly as high number of people doing it because one, it turned an item that was totally useless into arguably the best in slot pocket item, although there are some cases where other items are a little bit better depending on context, but arguably best in slot pocket slide item that's worth 390 mil. So now you have another really nice drop that you could split. Plus the torn pages go for right around 4 mil on the Grand Exchange, and you get about, in my experience, maybe 1 in every 5 to 6 kills you get one. Okay. Maybe it's 1 in every 4 kills, something like that, but it's about 1 an hour. So it's an extra 4 mil an hour that you're making on average, or at worst 4 mil every 2 hours that you're making on average.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, not bad.
All right.
And plus it's fun. The book happens to be very, very good at Solak itself because there are few to no times where you onslaught. Well, I don't need to get into the details of that, I guess, but it is a very nice change. And I think there are many people who are doing Solak now who would not be if that was not an item.
All right, so that was a pretty big part of this update. Solak, without it, you wouldn't see as many people there. We'll call Solak as then the benchmark for top end in 2018. And, we've already heard that 2019 won't see anything as difficult as these. They're going to focus more mid-range and whatnot. Tannis, do you have anything on Solak that you'd like to ask David, or anything that you'd like to just recap on?
Not really. Yeah, not really. It's so far out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't know where to begin.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about something now that we did have a try with you. You have something else on Solak?
It's worth mentioning that this is the first high-end boss where accuracy is not a barrier to being able to hit. So it's the first high-end boss ever that the use of a Berserk aura like Maniacal, Reckless, or Berserker is not very close to a requirement. And so to me, that's a hugely positive and welcome change because splashing is just not a fun mechanic. Like whether or not it's good for the game or bad for the game, my personal opinion is that it is straight up not fun. So I think the way that defense was handled at Solak by allowing people to be able to kill the boss effectively without auras and without the need for the top gear to even hit the boss, I think that's a really welcome change.
Okay, and this is the first boss that's ever done that?
Yeah, first high-end boss that has ever been like that. Yeah.
All right.
That's not aura locked.
All right. So the other two big PvM updates this year were, of course, the Elite Dungeons, Elite Dungeon 1, Temple of Amanishi, and Elite Dungeon 2, the Dragonkin Laboratory. The three of us did take a run through Elite Dungeon 1 on release. Tannis, we had some issues with that due to I think we can say accessibility of it.
Yeah, it was just
and
one of those things.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys blitzed it through on the first day, David, you and your friends and whatnot. But do you think the general consensus that Jagex came to, do you agree with it, that it was perhaps tuned a bit too high?
Yeah, it was weird because it seemed like it was in an odd place where it was tuned too high for the intended audience. But then for the people who could do it easily, the rewards were just not worth it. Like the mechanics were not that interesting to me, which is the thing I'm looking for and I'm most interested to, especially coming off of how honestly thrilling the experience of Solak was for a lot of us.
Right.
Like when we were first figuring that out, no guide, completely without any knowledge of what was happening. And so that was a little frustrating. And then like the rewards, well, they have improved. So soloing in particular was buffed pretty substantially. So I think it's in the range of God Wars 2 in profit, although I could be wrong. I don't do a lot of it, but it's at least more God Wars 2 profit than God Wars 1 profit. But I thought it was I don't know. It was weirdly too hard and too easy at the same time. I don't know.
Okay. And, just to kind of split that out, because that sounds like a contradiction on paper. So, but that effectively means that it was too hard for the casual folks, and that we can call myself and Tanis that when it comes to PvM, I think, right?
Yeah, sure.
But way too easy for you and two other people to run through it. And, remember also with Elite Dungeon 1, there was the issue where story mode was rewarding up to 200,000 dungeoneering tokens an hour if you killed all the bosses, which was promptly patched.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was fixed quickly. Although that's still the case in Elite Dungeon 1. You could get a ton of tokens real fast if you do the story mode, obviously, but
mode. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this was their first, kind of what most games like World of Warcraft and whatnot call a raid. And, minus the tuning issues, from my perspective here at the podcast, it's a unique update. It was the first we ever had of anything like this, and it went down well. And that would be my general sense of it. Do you share that sense?
Yeah, I think it was good overall. I mean, it was a good effort. I think that because of what came next, it's clear how much better it could have been. But I think it was also very pretty, which is unfortunately not something that I can notice. But from what I heard, it was like a very, very beautiful piece of content, which is great.
Both of them
really
had
great.
Amazing maps. And, this was initially a project that was started in December of 2017, and it was using just initial assets that already existed in game. But they liked where it was going, so they actually commissioned full level design, full artwork for both of these Elite Dungeons, and this is what we ended up with at the end, and that's why I think why they just popped so much. So, Elite Dungeon 1, I hate to say this, was effectively the... no, I'm not going to say that. That would be bad. You guys probably know what I'm thinking at this point, but I'm not going to say it. Do you guys know where I was going with that?
Yeah, it's the first raid.
Yes, it's the first raid. We'll just call it that, but I was thinking something else.
Oh.
But anyways, so Temple of Amanishi, very arc-themed, and, people... So you think that the loot is on par with God Wars Dungeon 2 on this if you're soloing and you're doing
I think
standard?
if you're soloing, you're efficient. From what I've heard, I haven't tested this, which I don't want to confirm anything, but I think it's close. I don't think it's as good. And by the way, I think that Vindicta and Hellware and Gorvek are just way less effort than Elite Dungeon 1. Although I think Elite Dungeon 1 is potentially more interesting if you're into the sort of
the
exploration, dungeony type stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very pretty and all that. You're not just doing the same thing over and over again, but there's 3 different bosses instead of 1. So I think, I think it's close to as good. Although I don't think it's quite there. I think it's still less, but it's better than before. Like on release, it was like, I'm pretty sure less money than Kriara.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which you can like take a shower while you're killing if you want to. So you probably could if you wanted to. So yeah.
All right. So then we had the Dragonkin Laboratory, which is where I think Elite Dungeons got real, because once again we had a map that blew everyone away. You had lava strike worms and all kinds of dragons and fiery type creatures in there. And if you have a Dragon Slayer task, you can go into Elite Dungeon 2 and do your Dragon Slayer task with this and get insane amounts of Slayer XP from killing these things in there. And also lava strike worms too, I'd imagine. So I think Dragonkin Laboratory was received better by people just because it was so much more polished. And they delayed it, twice, I think it was?
Yeah.
Resulting in about a month.
Delays, yeah.
And, we were very proud of it, and we were very happy with how it felt going through it. And combat-wise, it was easier than the Temple of Amanishi, I'll say that. We got it done on our first or second run, whereas Temple of Amanishi, I think, took 3 or 4, if I recall correctly, something like that. But the Dragonkin Laboratory, I think, is the elite dungeon that everybody focuses on, and everyone I know, at least people in Clan Quest, are still going back to do just for the hell of it, right?
Oh, people love it. I mean, that's one of the, I think of all of 2018, to me, that's one of the updates that you can point to that a large chunk of the population can say, I loved this update. It was the best of the year, or one of my favorites of the year. It was kind of nice to see that that was a PvM update.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say it's definitely probably... Do I want to put it top 3? It's definitely top 5. You guys know what number 1 and number 2 are for me.
Yeah.
Since we're not doing the year
Same
review,
as mine.
Since we're not doing
Same
the
as
year
mine.
review, I'll just say that number 1 is the needle skips, number 2 is the player-owned farm.
Oh, okay. Never mind. That is not the same as what I got.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Needle skips was interesting to me. So the way I handled needle skips was I had a long commute to something for my job where I was sitting in the car for a few hours, and so I watched someone stream needle skips on Twitch, without a guide, watched the whole thing, and then when it came to getting my comp cape back, I just entered all the words and was done in 3 minutes. So that was my compromise that I made. It was like, I want my comp cape back immediately, but I will watch someone work through it and pretend like it's me doing it.
Okay, all right. Back to Elite Dungeon 2. Tanis, did you ever take a run through Elite Dungeon 2?
No, that was the only one I actually wanted to do, and I couldn't get there.
Right, because of the requirement.
Yeah.
Well,
bad move.
We could probably, that was, and they have said that when Elite Dungeon 3 comes out, that requirement will be going away.
Oh, thank goodness.
Good.
But I mean, if you take me, and maybe even if you took David, but probably even just me, we could get through story mode on Amanishi, no problem, and get that requirement unlocked for you. At some point.
That would be cool. That'd be very cool.
Because you can do that. And one thing we didn't mention in talking about Temple of Amanishi is first it was 50% of the damage that regular mode did. Then they took it down to 33%. Then finally they took it down to 10%. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I might actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was taken down numerous times, story mode damage, and that you take. So it's only 10% as hard as regular mode now.
I mean, that seems correct, though. That's the point of story mode, right?
And this is something we've been talking about for years and whatnot with the Master Quest Cape, is that we don't want people to have the Master Quest Cape but have to, get bloody noses and whatnot when it comes to, doing the PvM events. Sure, they should have to do some PvM, but they shouldn't have to, go through the hardest, PvM encounters. And one of the big culprits right now out there is Nex, Angel of Death, for lore books and the like. So I'm glad that they made those changes to story mode on Temple of Amanishi and the Dragonkin Lab. For me, the highlight of the Dragonkin Lab was just that it was dragons, and of course, if there was need for a Dragon Slayer task or a Lava Strike Worm task, or you wanted to just kill Lava Strike Worms even, you could just go into this elite dungeon, do that, and have that be your way of killing these things rather than, trekking through the wilderness and the like. So I enjoyed Dragonkin Lab for that reason, plus also the boss fight at the end of it. Combat-wise, David, how do you think that Dragonkin Lab felt compared to other things?
So I liked it a lot more than the first one. I thought that the mechanics were much less punishing in some ways, but also more interesting. Like I think that, for the second boss, you have to interact with the eggs that that in order to get rid of your charge. I think the way they did the Blackstone Dragon Flames was really cool. The first boss, once you figure out how it works, is really interesting. I think the mechanics were simultaneously easier to deal with, but also much more engaging. Because I think that for the other one, it was just a lot of stuff to tank and avoid, and this was much more stuff
utilizing the
actively
map and moving around. And
stuff you were actively interacting with.
Whereas Elite Dungeon 2 is just smarter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I mean, I don't know, and also dragons are just cool, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I just like dragons. The lore. I mean, I'm sure the lore of the other stuff was really cool, but it was like the lore for two to me was really, felt much more like RuneScape.
Yeah,
If
and
that makes sense.
I think Elite Dungeon One lore is a bit odd because it's kind of linked in with the finale of the Pirate Quest and where we're heading with Zautak and whatnot. But I imagine we'll see a coming together of everything in Elite Dungeon 3 in the new year. Reward wise, Dragonkin Lab, how are we looking at money wise compared to ED1?
Well, so the commons are less good, but you have the chance at the rare drops. So one ability book from each boss, Mutated Fury, Mutated Flurry, and Mutated Barge. Mutated Fury and Flurry are small changes and worth getting, especially Fury for people who use Revolution. Mutated Barge has absolutely changed the meta of PvM. I mean, it's unbelievably strong. What it's capable of doing. Every single record that was set prior to Mutated Barge got absolutely shattered once Mutated Barge was released.
Okay,
Um,
and
and
this is what I wanted to ask about. When it comes to the Dragonkin Lab, would you say that the melee abilities and the drops from it were more impactful than the boss experience itself?
for me, yes, but I'm also speaking from a very limited perspective in the sense that I don't think a lot of people would share that. For me, Mutated Barge changed the way you do Solak. It changed the way you do Virago. In some cases, it changes the way you do like Tellus. It certainly completely changed Araxor. So there are a lot of bosses where the method you used to kill the boss literally changed because of how powerful Mutated Barge is. And so I bought mine when it was really expensive, but now it's about half the price because the drop rate was doubled very recently.
All right, so what does Mutated
Notice that.
Barge do?
Well, so the first thing it does is that while you're out of combat, it allows you to charge it so that you can end up doing a ton of damage, which is good and niche for certain places. I read about it recently in an article. At Araxor on Phase 4, you could build on a dummy, allowing you to charge your Mutated Barge and then barge for a lot of damage. The real thing that it does that is incredible is that it turns your next channeled ability into a bleed. And so Melee has two extremely strong channeled threshold abilities, Assault and Destroy. And so what you could do is you can Mutated Barge and then Assault, and your Assault will act as a bleed, allowing you to continue doing damage while you have the most powerful threshold arguably in the game as a bleed. So if you're Zerked, your Mutated Barge plus Assault plus Adrenaline Potion will allow you to, or Mutated Barge plus Adrenaline Potion plus Limitless Sigil will allow you to do an Assault and a Destroy simultaneously, which ends up on average giving you about 90k damage over 6 seconds, which is a lot of damage in 6 seconds.
Yeah, and just for clarification for anyone wondering the difference between a channel and a bleed, a channel ability means that you need to have yourself focused on the boss or whichever thing you're wanting to do damage to, and you cannot activate any other abilities while you're doing that channeled abilities. Whereas a bleed, you just put it on the target at the beginning, and then you can move on to a different target or activate a different ability on that same target.
Yeah, exactly. And so you could turn your Assault into a bleed and then immediately do more thresholds or more basics or whatever. So it's just like really, really big burst damage boost.
All right. Now, how about Mutated Flurry and Fury? Where do those end up being used?
So Fury is just a straight upgrade over the original. It turns it from a channeled ability into a non-channeled ability, which makes it very, very nice for Revolution users. It also stacks, its critical hit buff stacks with the Grimoire, so it allows you to combo off for some pretty massive critical hit damage, assuming the crit buff goes off, which is increasingly likely. It's much more likely to go off when you're using a Grimoire, because Grimoire makes critical hits 12% more likely. And then the way the buff works is that if Fury is a critical hit, then your immediately next ability will be a critical hit. So it just really makes the crit stack. And then Flurry is a little bit more niche. You still cancel it early, but it is definitely a big improvement. And a lot of people are using it at Solak on the core. That's the only place I know of it being used. That's the only place I use it. But after Assault and Destroy, it's the third best melee threshold in certain instances.
All right. And, the only place I knew Flurry to be used before was at Eretz, to stop
right,
attack.
which I think most people use a Scythe at Eretz anyways.
Okay, because that way then you can just stay the 2 squares away.
Yeah, and you just AoE them.
All right. So, I had a good experience with Elite Dungeon 2, less so with Elite Dungeon 1, but it wasn't necessarily bad. And I think both of these updates, from my perspective, were combat updates that I could potentially get into, and they made me want to do more combat. But at the time, I had other things going on and whatnot, and I actually haven't gone back to either of these since. And that's something I'd like to do at some point, and just tick off a list maybe to do. Tanis, anything on Elite Dungeon 2 questions you'd have for David that you'd like to bring up before we move on?
No, I'm just I'm looking forward to them dropping that requirement or going again and trying to get through the first one. Because, that was one that I was actually really looking forward to because, yes, dragons are cool.
Yeah, totally cool. And also, I think we should mention that this was, as far as I know, the first, I guess Solak was duo or 7-man, but this is the first real test of you could either do it solo, duo, or trio. And so that I thought that was interesting. A lot of people in the past have complained that the problem with high-level PvM is not the difficulty, but finding teammates. And so they want their MMO experience to be solo only, which is kind of ironic, but sure.
Yeah, kind of sad.
Yeah, but it's fine. It is what it is. And so the fact that it's not overly penalizing for making you solo, and if you're efficient, the GP per hour is potentially better as a solo, which is, I think, a good thing they did that. And it's also just a great introduction to, it's a great transition piece for group content.
Yeah, that's what I found too. Coming from the Queen Black Dragon, these are a good stepping stone to something else eventually.
Yeah, and I think we have God Wars Dungeon 2 for the solo perspective. And of course you can mass God Wars Dungeon 2. But I think in terms of interacting with mechanics that deal with you as a group, because I think God Wars 2, it's basically you're dealing with solo mechanics as a group, but in here you're kind of getting used to coordination and figuring stuff out and deciding what order to do things in, etc. And so I think it's a great way to get you introduced to what it's like to work in a team and have to deal with different mechanics and damage that assumes some small level of team coordination, which I think is good.
All right. Now, two of the other big things this year that we talked about on the podcast, and, this is how we actually first met up with you, is you posted in response to one of our episodes regarding Fortic auto-attacking and the like. This year was Jagix's finally patching C4TAA, continuous Fortic auto-attacking, and affirming Fortic auto-attacking as a playstyle in game. So,
Yep.
I mean, obviously, you use Fortic auto-attacking because it's an extra, 10, 12% DPS?
I don't think it's that high. It's probably more like 7,
okay.
6 to 8%. I think continuous was more like 10 to 12%. And then I on a dummy, it was 15%, but that's obviously perfect ideal conditions. The continuous was. But I think in-game, it was probably right around 12%. I think that Fortic AA is between 5 and 7% better.
All right.
Which is a ton. I don't want to, not to suggest that that's not a ton, because it is huge.
All right. So for people joining us for the first time, David, give a quick rundown of what you're doing now for Fortic auto attacking, and what continuous Fortic auto attacking was before it was patched.
Sure. So the rundown is that it requires switching between a wand, which has a faster auto attack rate, than a staff. The staff has the advantage of having a higher damage dealing auto attack ability. It deals on average 125% ability damage, which is quite a bit considering how many 100% damage abilities that we have. And so what you do is every time you use a dual wield attack, so if you say used Dragon Breath with a wand and Singularity, you could switch to a staff immediately afterwards and wait for 4 game ticks, or wait the extra tick and get off a lossless auto attack. So right as your next ability comes off cooldown, so you do Dragon Breath, and let's say you want to use Combust next. So you do your Dragon Breath, switch to a staff. Right as the Combust comes off of global cooldown, which is 3 ticks, you wait 1 extra tick, so that 4th tick, and you simultaneously cast an auto attack and the Combust, which gives you an extra staff auto at the cost of waiting 1 game tick, which ends up being quite a bit of extra damage over time.
And I assume, did you guys ever get a response from Jagex if it's okay to use like a mouse to switch weapons to this? Or
well, so you can certainly use a mouse. So
like a mouse keybind.
I have so my mouse keybinds. I use so my mouse has all of my weapons are keybound on my I have 12 buttons on the left side of my mouse, and I use my thumb to switch between all my weapons. The thing that I think should happen, I wrote about this recently, I think that they should okay some form of macro usage. So for example, being able to put on both your wand and your offhand with 1 key, that seems reasonable to me. Currently, I use 2 keys to do it. But limited macro usage like that seems like it would be a nice thing for people in the current era, although I understand that's certainly a debatable issue. But anyways, so continuous 4-ticking is the same as 4-tick auto-attacking, except that with 4-tick auto-attacking, you can only get that lossless auto every other ability. So you use, in the example, Dragon Breath, lossless auto plus Combust, switch back to Wand, and offhand do another ability, and then switch back to Staff, lossless auto plus Staff, and that's the cycle. Continuous allowed you to do it with every single ability. So you would rotate between, instead of doing it every other ability, you would get a lossless auto with every single one of your abilities, because you would go wand offhand ability into staff, back into wand offhand, and cast your staff ability plus your next dual wield ability. And so you would just continuously do it without ever stopping. I used to do this when it was legal, and it would hurt my hands really bad. So I'm glad they banned it, because macro usage was extremely common with this stuff, because I know that some people were able to do it without, but
people obviously didn't get caught for doing this, did they?
Well, either they didn't get caught, or it just wasn't enforced, I guess. But a lot of people were using a macro. The most common macro was just wand plus offhand with 1 button instead of 2 buttons. But there was another macro that was wand plus that was staff plus auto back to wand and offhand, so it did 4 buttons with just 1 click. And so when I did it fully manually, and I would often have to bathe my hands in ice water after all day.
God, Tannis, can you believe this?
It was so painful. Yeah.
I cannot.
So I'm happy it was removed, just because I think my hands are not nearly as much pain. 4-tick auto attacking is not even close. I mean, it's literally half as much work as the other.
Right.
And 4-tick auto attacking might seem kind of wild to some people who have not done it, but for people who have manually done continuous 4-tick auto attacking, this feels like revolution to me.
Right.
It's so smooth.
And for anyone wondering, if you want a full rundown on what this was, I'll put a link to David's Informer article, Unlocking Full Manual, Taking Advantage of the Tick System, Part 1, where you do talk about 4-tick auto-attacking. And you do have, at the end of this one, and, it's a good idea to include this, you do have a GIF of one of the cycles in there. So
yeah, I do. Yeah, taking advantage of
I realize we went through that relatively quickly. You can rewind and go have another listen back at it. But if you wanted in text form, there'll be a link in the show notes to that article, which you can find at update.rsbnb.com. And, you know, I have to say, I went to the dummies after reading this article, and I had a look at it, and I just tried it with my tier 75 wands and whatnot and staff, and yeah, you know, it works. I don't know if it's something I would do every day, because I don't have a mouse that's capable of it, and I think if I was going to get into top end PVM like you are, I would have to invest in one of those mice. I used to have one, but it broke, so I don't anymore. But it definitely works. So if this sounds interesting to you, have a read through this.
Well, I'm glad it worked. That makes me feel kind of good. You got it from text. That's great.
Yeah, it was good. Now, there's something we should talk about before we move on to our next point here regarding 4-tick auto-attacking, is that, well, I don't know if we should talk. We'll talk about it now because we're on that topic. They're going to be bringing this in to the other combat types, presumably in next year, with the Weapon Diversity Project. So that's one of the ways they're going to be making weapons more diverse and offering more choice. Is that for these other ones, you're going to have the option to 4-tick auto attack. It's going to give you an extra auto attack with the weapon type. So how do you feel about that? You think that's a good way to go?
Well, so that one in particular, it's like a chance to immediately do an auto attack after, but that's not the same, because you can't really plan a rotation around a % chance of a lossless auto.
Okay.
So consistency wise, I don't think it'll keep pace with Magic. The limited stuff that I saw from what I remember, basically Magic just got a straight boost in terms of each spell now doing a different thing. So Magic was flatly improved. It'll probably be annoying to go for fast kills once that comes out, because there'll be spell switching will be a thing. So there'll be certain times when one type of spell is better and other times when another type of spell is better. So there's that. But you can also probably just ignore it, and it's just a flat up boost. Ranged, I thought, was just a bunch of stuff that just does not close the gap at all with the other two styles. Like Backromental Bolts are fantastic and a really, really good start for ranged catching up to the other two, but it's just really not good enough. And then Melee was also just a straight up boost at the cost of Switchscape. So there are a bunch of little niche weapon types you could start using that you can start just bringing even more weapons. I already bring like 7 melee weapons as it is, so I'll bring even more. Well, because I bring Kopesh's, Flanking Switch, Lunging Switch, Scythe, ZGS, Hammer. So that's 7 melee weapons is already what I bring, just as my standard.
Okay,
loadout.
so it basically it's not going to be as prominent as it is with Magic and the staff swap. So
well, it's weird because the other two got buffed, but you have to do a thing to get the buff effort-wise, whereas Magic is just straight up getting boosted. So the wand being able to have a chance to just cast vulnerability without you putting any effort. So now you could not only losslessly vulnerability, but you could effortlessly vulnerability. And then each of the elemental things getting its own unique buff. It's just like for literally zero extra work, Mage is getting a buff. If you're willing to do a bunch of work, Melee will get a buff. And so that choice is strange to me. Perhaps they're thinking as like the people who are taking advantage of this stuff are 4-ticking, and 4-ticking is way more effort than Melee or ranged, which is true. But I think that given Mage's relative hegemony at the top of the combat triangle, and you know that's been the case for years now, it seems a strange choice to just give Magic an effortless improvement.
All right.
I don't know.
So Jagex officially affirmed 4-tick auto attacking this year. We talked about potential changes that can be coming with the Weapon Diversity Project in Magic, but Jagex also affirmed Magic as the top dog once again this year with the dyed rune pouches debacle.
Oh, yeah.
Just go back a few weeks on the podcast here as a brief summary. There was a rather innocuous patch note. Rune pouches can now be dyed. A player can have more than one. Yeah, this was initially just supposed to be recoloring the rune pouches, as was put in and designed, but it turned out that people were going to be able to have these rune pouches on their own, in their own inventory, in different colors. So what this effectively means is that huge amounts of inventory space can be saved by using multiple rune pouches, which you couldn't before this update. Jagex reverted the change, then decided that they weren't going to be reverting it, and then the following week after added a level 66 requirement to use these dyed rune pouches, which, as we talked about on the podcast, 66 is way too low. It should be 95 or 99 based on the kind of people who are using this. So
Yeah, 99 would be fine, because all the people who are sad that it was removed have 99 magic anyway, so just 99 would be fine.
Yeah. And, this is, much about the way Jagex communicates with their updates and the way they handle the PvM community and whatnot. And, I think they could have handled this differently because I'll let you explain it, but you've basically said that this it was just mind-blowing. I'll let you explain it, just the amount of inventory spots this saved you. I think it saved you 12? Or something?
No, not quite that many. Although it could potentially save even more. So basically, the meta for high level PvM at a lot of bosses is to be on Ancients, which gives you access to all of the. Gets you access to Intercept, which is really important for team bosses like Virago, and also gives you access to things like Blood Blitz, Ice Barrage, Blood Barrage, etc., which have utility. It also gives you access to Spellbook Swap, which allows you to swap spellbooks for one ability. And so you could swap to normals for vulnerability, or you could swap to lunars for Disruption Shield or Vengeance, are the two most common. But Heal Other is also another one that sometimes people will swap to. And so prior to this update, I was bringing 10 runes to every fight. I never got a small rune pouch because finding people in, is it called Deathmatch? Is that what the update is? It's not Bounty Hunter, but the other one, the minigame, that you get the small rune pouch for. Whatever that is, it's so dead.
It was Bounty Hunter. It was Bounty Hunter.
You can't find people to do it with you unless you I don't know. You have to boost. That's what it's called. You have to boost it to get it. And so I really feel like doing that.
I mean, that's the state of PvP. It's the state of PvP in RS3.
Right. And so I never had that. So I took with me at all times to Virago and a few other bosses 7 runes in my inventory, plus 3 in my pouch that was in my preset. So I always brought 10 runes, although some people bring 12 runes. And so now those runes are now inside of 4 rune pouches. So it's saving me 4 inventory spaces get saved because each rune pouch is obviously a slot as well. But if I wanted to use dust runes and steam runes and just be dice, it would save me 5. So it saves potentially 5 inventory slots. And so also another plug for for Informer, I mentioned rune pouches in an article as well. My take on it is that it's good, but I also am admittedly very biased because, I was part of the high-level community on Twitter who reacted with somewhat jokingly, but also not best PvM update of best update of 2018 or best update since Solak, because convenience-wise, it really is hugely helpful. It's just really, really, really nice. And plus, it's hard to say no to an extra 4 inventory slots. But the PR, I did not particularly touch on the PR side in terms of yes, we'll revert it because Reddit is angry. Never mind, we won't revert it because Reddit just got even angrier. So I don't feel particularly comfortable enough with PR and communication studies to know what their PR approach should have been. I will say that as a high-level PVMer, it's a really nice update. I wrote in my article that I think it's also good for people who are trying to get into the top levels, but were worried about food consumption, it now lets you try stuff like Spellbook Swap out without feeling like you're dedicating a third of your inventory just to runes.
Now, the question at the end of the day, though, and I think the answer is yes, this just further affirms the position of Magic, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly useful in some instances with melee, less so with range, but it's useful in some instances with melee and range, but it's just a straight up, once again, just a lossless buff to Magic. Is I think has been a theme recently where the other styles have gotten buffs, but at a cost. Magic has been getting buffs with no drawbacks, if that makes sense.
All right. And I mean, I think at this point it's here to stay, and this is going to lead into the question I'm going to start our last segment off with. But before that, I know there was some follow-ups from this regarding last week's Alchemical Onyx update. In regards to Ingenuity of the Humans, have you guys found a use for that sigil yet anywhere?
So it's incredibly niche, and the places where it is useful, it's probably still not as good as Limitless. The advantage is it's incredibly cheap. So if you feel like Limitless is too expensive, Ingenuity is fine. The main uses are using affinity reducing special attacks, such as the Stadius Warhammer, while using ranged or magic. So you can use magic, have the Warhammer, equip the Warhammer, use Ingenuity of the Humans, and then your Warhammer spec will be 100%. So again, it's like weirdly buffs magic in that way. Because now you could, like, when you're dueling Virago, it used to be really, really annoying to bring a full-on switch so you could Warhammer spec. Now you could just use the sigil if you wanted to. But then again, because it shares a cooldown with Limitless, it's debatable whether it's even worth it. And then the other use is a similar thing. So while on ranged or melee, you could use Ingenuity of the Humans to have 100% success rate of vulnerability. So you could be in full melee gear or full range gear, cast vulnerability, and hit with 100%, which is the best use that I've seen so far is at Nex. It's extremely common at Nex to bring a wand and defender and mage robes to vuln at the start of the kill. Now you could just bring the sigil, use the sigil vuln at the start of the kill without having to worry about bringing a full mage switch. So that's kind of nice.
And when you think about it, vulnerability can splash, right?
Right, vulnerability can splash even with magic.
Okay, so that's a reason why that helps with that.
Right,
case,
and so if you're in range gear or melee gear, there's almost no chance your vulnerability is going to hit.
Okay.
But this makes it 100%.
All right. Now...
yeah, I think if they made it not share a cooldown with the Limitless sigil, or they tweaked it, it would be better. But right now, it's really outclassed by Limitless. And part of that is because I think Limitless is too good. I mean, that's a whole other topic. But I think Limitless being too good means that almost any sigil that would power creep Limitless would be game breaking.
All right. And, this brings us to 2019, and we've looked at this, and we had some good PvM updates in Soul Act and the Elite Dungeons, and in particular, Elite Dungeons 2 with the rewards that it drops. We then had the affirmation of 4-tick auto-attacking from Jagex this year. The affirmation of magic as being the one that most people will use, and, well, not affirmation of it, it just has been further solidified with the Dyed Rune Pouch update. And now, looking into 2019, we've heard that they're going to be looking more at the mid-range bossing, God Wars level, which I think is good because that's where the majority of the community is. Do you think we're heading towards a point where we need another combat rebalance, and that with, Ingenuity of Humans, you're able to use vulnerability as a one-off if you're using melee only, or if you're using magic, you're allowed to bring in a Stadius Warhammer, use Ingenuity of Humans, get that big hit off, and away you go, continue using magic with your 4-tick auto-attacking and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting shades. This is starting to remind me of how combat was prior to EOC. Tannis?
Yes and no. I don't have a ton of faith that we would get a rebalancing in the next 5 years.
Well, yeah, look what happened last time they rebalanced it.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm seeing this isosceles triangle form where Magic is clearly on top, and I don't know what they're going to be able to do about that because of the reaction we saw with the Rune Pouch change.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, if you quit caving, that would be a good start.
Do you buff the other two to be as strong as Magic then?
I don't know. I mean, PvM is in a weird place because while there are lots and lots of updates that would be good for many people, and I think they explained this with the power armor, and I know there's a question about that, so I won't get into that specifically. But an update that is very good for the majority of players is game breaking at the highest end. So any amount of no added content is deemed worthwhile unless it power creeps previous content. Just 'cause that makes sense, is how people think about things. But we're at a level where things are so strong that any level of power creep beyond that is game breaking when it comes to the very top end. And so they're in a weird spot where it's really hard for them to power creep stuff. And they've already said that they're unwilling to necessarily release harder content.
And tier 95 weapons aren't coming.
Right. One idea that I love, and this would be not EOC scale combat rebalance, but would be really significant, is that when you take extremely high leveled gear to lower leveled content, whether that be Slayer or bossing or whatever, your gear becomes capped at whatever that level is. So if let's say like Nex is tier 80, when you go fight Nex with tier 92s, your weapons might be capped at like tier 85 or something like that.
So that might add a bit of a challenge back for some people.
Right. And so, exactly. So then, it would allow them to release, say, tier 95 weapons with a tier 95 boss, because you can't then take those tier 95 weapons and just absolutely shred Vindicta with them or something like that, because maybe at Vindicta weapons are capped at 90. I mean, I think this would be really unpopular because people hate reverses in power
definitely.
creep. People
I agree.
love shredding things.
But sometimes, you got to take the step forward and make that happen.
Right. And the way they did God Wars Dungeon 2 in particular is just they flooded it with skilling drops like herbs and logs and seed, like all that stuff. And so they can't really increase power creep because every % increase in power creep is a % increase in the thousands of herbs that are coming into the game through PvM when they shouldn't be or whatever. And so I think that this idea of creating caps on weapons based on the content you're doing is really interesting, although I don't think it would be popular with the player base who just wants to annihilate stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it becomes a difficult spot. As we saw with the Rune Pouch update, it would need to be a community-driven process, just like the mining and smithing rework. And there would need to be honest discussion as to why things are being done.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, my next question is: we've seen the Game Jam project with weapon diversity and whatnot. Do you think there's any other way other than the weapon diversity project to bring ranged and melee back into the game?
Not unless they released a boss that dropped a lot of money that was immune to magic attacks. They could do that. We could go back to, instead of it being fully balanced with the combat triangle, back in the old days, this is how it was like, is that certain weapons were good against certain bosses. Certain things were really, really strong versus melee, but not as strong versus ranged, and etc. And so if they started releasing bosses that were just, say, had 25% magic defense, then using magic there would be impossible because you wouldn't hit. I don't know if people want that. I don't know I think that would be another thing that might be unpopular, but I think that really would have to be what that'd be. And because the problem is that anything that would make melee and ranged on par with or better than mage would be too good, because mage is too good, if that makes sense.
So you think it's a case of magic being too good and the others just not, and the others just being normal?
Yeah, the others are in line with what they should be. Melee is phenomenal burst damage. Ranged is like solid and has some utility. But Magic just is too good. It's too diverse. It outclasses stuff too much. 4-ticking is too good. Yeah, I think it would be worse for the game if the other two got brought up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why it's such a hard. I don't know. I'm not a balancer, so I don't.
Yeah, no, and
know how to.
just to further look at this, I got the weapon diversity doc up, and for the weapon diversity doc, staffs aren't going to be getting anything because they're powerful enough as it is with the extra magic. Wands are going to have every critical hit fires off a spell of your choosing, provided you have the runes and you're on the right book. Orbs will have increased crit chance while the opponent has an active magic damage over time dot. Books will boost spell effects. So, and I mean, we already have the changes to the various types of normal spells too in that regard.
Yeah, and if you look at water and earth, they're just like straight up power creep.
Yeah, every third hit deals more damage for earth.
Right, for no reason. Like it's not like it's like not like you're doing anything to cause it. It's like for no reason you just get bonuses. You just get bonuses.
Water gains 0.5% damage each time a new ability is used, and when an ability is repeated, this damage is reset.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, the weapon diversity project is good and whatnot. It's going to be good for those of us who are doing Slayer with melee and ranged. But when it comes down to it at the top end, nothing is going to dethrone magic aside from, I think, hitting it with the nerf pad, and that's what we have established here. And I guess the question going forward is that in the cards for 2019?
I don't think so. I do think that I would not be shocked though if they did the thing where they just made a boss have 10% stronger magic defense. You could easily have a lore reason for it. Everyone would understand, and so I don't know. I think that having a new boss that came out that was good money, that was relevant, but magic was bad at, I think would, and then, yeah, I don't know. I think that would fix the issue. And Ingenuity of the Humans would allow you to cast vulnerability as a ranger or with melee, so there'd be no reason to even bring one mage for the purpose of one.
And when you think about it, introducing more bosses, and they don't necessarily need to be Solak level or Telos level, or even God Wars Dungeon 2 level, maybe, would probably help spread that diversity around a bit.
Yeah, I think they probably need to be God Wars 2 level because they would have to make enough money for people to care about them. But,
yeah, that's a whole other topic in itself, too, with PvM. We're seeing the removal of mining and smithing materials from all the bosses, and we're going to see how that goes when the mining and smithing rework is released. And I think, that could be a blueprint to removing other things like herbs and seeds and wood. Yeah, so
herbs, seeds, wood, nests should all go. They have no place on the table.
I mean, if anybody in RS3 has a problem with removing those, just look at Old School. Old School downright said we have a problem with nests, and they dealt with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, you just got to present the case, and you got to have the goodwill to do it. And, I'd like to think from the PvM community that they built up enough goodwill this year with Elite Dungeon 1, 2, and Solak, and, giving you guys your 4-tick auto attacking approval stamp, and letting you guys have all those rune pouches too. So maybe there is goodwill.
I mean, I think, like I said, I think 2017 or 2018, excuse me, has been a great year for PvM generally. Really high level players have gotten mutated Barge and Solak, which maybe, you could say that that's enough given what a small percentage is. And so that's why in the intros, like for me personally, it wasn't that great, but I think on a whole, it was very good.
All right. I don't have any other questions about 2019. Do you, Tanis?
No. I guess, yeah, I mean, the only question I had going into this was thinking that if the mining and smithing rework actually works out, could we go about the problem with Telos by going about the problem with the drops? You know what I mean? Like, instead of having to nerf or do this or that, you just take those drops out, and then now you're not getting 60 mil an hour.
Something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, God Wars 2 is the biggest problem. Telos is maybe the second biggest. I only say that because way less people do Telos than God Wars 2. But I think they're just, the drop tables are just really bad. Just like magic logs should not drop from bosses.
Yep.
Toad flax should not drop from Telos. I should not be getting 250 nests from Telos. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They should be, and they're bad drops. They're bad drops because every single time a new herb is added to a drop table, it very quickly becomes bad in terms of profit because they come into the game so much faster than ever before. And so they're not, PVMers don't, that's the really strange thing to me is like PVMers don't like those drops. They're not good drops. You'd much rather have things you get alk because there's a floor on how low they can go.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Someone who is, very, very high up in the PVM scene. And, I think we can call you an elite PVMer, David, would rather have things that can alk. So that's good to hear. My final question for 2019 is, what would you like to see in a couple sentences in PVM in 2019?
I want to see the next Virago, period. I mean, that's still my favorite boss. I think it has the highest skill cap of any boss in the game, except maybe Telos, but that's debatable. But it certainly has the highest skill cap of any group boss. And I think we need another boss that just revolutionizes everything and just like introduces a whole new level of mechanics. I think that's very unpopular. I think it's very unlikely to happen. I think very few people share that opinion. But I basically want like Solak, but just like really at the next level. Like whatever this Hostilius thing is, maybe something like that.
All right, so something in the vein of Virago that is able to be repeated because it's got all the different phases and whatnot and the different mechanics, but
and
one step further, one step more difficult. One step more difficult
mechanics.
Solak.
Yeah, mechanics changing each week is one of the biggest things that makes that boss so fun. Is because every you never really get bored because by the time you're bored with 1 week, it's now a new week. So a boss like Virago, big step up in difficulty from everything else. Just like Virago was just like monumentally ahead of everything else. It blew everything else out of the water. Plus a weekly rotation. Again, I think the chance of that happening is close to zero.
But hey, I asked you what you want.
That's what I want.
That's what you want, and that's what it is. Alrighty. We're going to move on to some more PVM stuff in just a moment, but first, just a brief reminder that this weekend's Winter Weekend is Combat and Slayer, so you get extra charms whenever you're killing anything, increased chance of rare drops and lucky items, 25% increased Slayer XP. All items will be treated as if you're using a VIP ticket. Shattered Worlds grants 50% extra anima. Everyone's favorite little mini game.
Yay!
I forgot about that thing. I forgot that existed.
Yeah. 10% cheaper instance fees, ability to loot from mass cab raids once a day, and you can choose your boss slayer assignments over the weekend. You'll have an increased catch chance on the Ushtabi, and also increased drop rates on the Grimoire pages at Solak. So.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
All right.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
So before we move on to our wonderful Patreon segment, there is actually a little contest that people can enter. You can win a gaming PC and gaming phone, a Razer gaming PC and gaming phone. Or sorry, it's a Chill Blast gaming PC and Razer phone 2, rather. And 6 months of membership. And all you need to do is head on over to this page, which is rs.game/wingamingpc. Or you can click on the link in the show notes to their page. But it's a survey through Facebook. You don't need an actual Facebook account to enter, I believe. But have a chance to win a Razer phone and a gaming PC. I think the Razer phone would be something that people would be very excited to see and play with once RuneScape Mobile comes out. Because hey, I mean, if you have an old phone, you don't have one of the newest phones, surely the Razer phone is going to be able to play RuneScape Mobile when it comes out. And gaming PCs are a thing that people need these days, and it's always nice having a really good gaming PC. So you can enter this in on the RuneScape Facebook page. Link will be in the show notes, as per usual. So, you guys going to enter this?
Already did.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'd like to see what the specs are on the gaming PC, but I can't seem to see that anymore.
I wondered that too.
Better than mine.
Yeah. Chill Blast Fusion Cirrus 4. Let me just have a quick Google what that is. Fusion Cirrus 4. So this is apparently a PC that was initially designed as a flight simulator PC. Intel 8700K, which means that it's an unlocked processor suitable for overclocking, very fast. 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, an NVIDIA GTX 1070 8GB version, and a 250GB SSD, as well as a 2TB storage hard drive as well, valued at 1,899 British pounds. So, it's a pretty nice PC, and that GTX 1070 is not something to sneeze at. So, it's a pretty good PC. So, enter it. Alrighty, so before we move on to questions, we'll just take a moment to thank our wonderful Patreon subscribers this week. And this week, we would like to thank Cody T, Kyle, Brock H, and Seth W. Thank you guys for your wonderful support of RSBANDB Update. And in case you were wanting to hear more about this, you can head on over to patreon.com/RSBANDB to get a bit of a brief rundown on what we're doing with this. But in a nutshell, basically, what ends up happening is for as little as $1 a month, you get early access to our show notes, the ability to join our roundtable discussions when you do them, and you help us fund the costs of RSBANDB. For $3 a month, you get all that, plus a special VIP rank on Discord, a mention on the podcast at the start of the month, and access to high-quality stereo AAC versions of the podcast. And if you want to step it up to $5, this allows you to receive a shout-out every week on the podcast, and it gives you exclusive access to the outtakes that we use for the clip show at the end of the year, which is coming up pretty soon. So more on that later. And what we're doing with this is we have our monthly bit bonus show that we record, and we talk about 1 or 2 issues in the RuneScape community every other month. These are released near the tail end of the month. And our next tier is called Inside RSBANDB Update, where you'll gain an inside look at RSBANDB Update, including interviews with our hosts and production team, and learn how the podcast comes together, and eventually get a sneak peek of where we record the podcast. The first one of those will be coming later this month, and if we reach $50, we'll be doing the RSBANDB Update Roundtable. We did one of these during the last Double XP weekend, and that was really enjoyable. Basically, we just gather around, play RuneScape for an hour, maybe a little bit more than that sometimes too, and chat about anything and everything RuneScape related, and everyone who is a Patreon supporter is allowed to join in those. And if for some reason we ever reach $100 a month, we'll have movie night with Shane and Tanis, where you'll join us for our favorite movie in Discord. And you can bet there's going to be some Star Trek thrown in there. So all of this and more can be found at patreon.com/RSBANDB. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful support.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty. So our first question, or rather our question this week, comes from Whitey, and he's wondering, do you think the fact that the Tier 92 Masterwork armor doesn't degrade on Slayer tasks will make other armors obsolete? I think a nice balance would be to wear the full set for the effect, and this makes the player choose between the damage boost from the Slayer helmet or the cost savings from non-degrading. Thoughts? I believe that is a set effect, that it doesn't degrade on Slayer, right? Or is that for all of the armor, or just for the individual pieces? I'm not entirely sure on that. I'm going to check that out quickly.
Yeah, so it's Slayer. It doesn't degrade on Slayer. And then they're considering it, not making it degrade while on Reaper tasks. So if they do that, then you can't use a Slayer helm. The Slayer helm does not boost you for Reaper tasks, so it would just be, there would not be that choice. But yeah. So I think that the Slayer helm is so okay. So you don't have to wear the full set effect. Wear the full thing for the set effect. Is that true?
I'm looking into that right now. I'm delving into that right now.
So if that's the case, I don't think that I cannot imagine a scenario where you would pick non-degrading armor in exchange for losing the Slayer helm, because the Slayer helm is a way bigger boost by itself than the difference between tier 92 and Bandos. So it would be better to wear Bandos and a Slayer helm than it would to wear the full set of tier 92. So that's why I don't really think it would balance it. It would just make it not viable.
Yeah, and I think that's the general sense too. And that's what I was thinking of that, is that it would become not viable if you're not wearing the full set.
Right. So like, I cannot imagine ever choosing save some money in exchange for losing the Slayer helm, because I'd rather use the Slayer helm and not even use Bandos without invention, because I think even that might be better than tier 92, assuming you have to wear the tier 92 helmet for the effect.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the fact that this is going to take forever to craft. Granted, they took the amount of bars down from 1,200 to 600, but still, that's a lot. So, and you also have to, put in numerous pieces of high-end power armor as it exists in game. So, I'm still not sure how many people are going to make this.
Well, don't you have to repair it the same way, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So for me, I probably would wear the set just because I don't want to repair that stuff again. Like after all that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just wouldn't wear it on Slayer tasks if that were the case. If I couldn't use a Slayer helm.
And just for current sake of argument here, I have not completed the Slayer helmet to its maximum level yet. That's the amount of Slayer that I do in game.
Yeah, fair enough. But even the basic Slayer helm is like still plus 10% accuracy and damage, something like that. I mean, that's massive. Yeah, that's huge.
Okay, so it's not the set effect; it's just customizing it and making it not tradable. So
yeah.
So you don't need to have the full set to get that benefit.
Okay.
Once you customize it, it makes it permanently untradeable in return for 50% slower degradation and charge loss, and no degrading or charge loss at all while on a Slayer or Reaper task. So you can wear your Slayer helmet and use this armor.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's too OP. Anything that makes this set have lasting value for skillers to me is good.
Right. And that's why I don't think...
The whole point is...
And that's why I don't think it's an issue, because the majority of people who are going to be doing this and whatnot are going to be people who are doing it from the skilling angle. Because if you have money and you're a top-end PvMer, you're likely to already have 120 Slayer when this update comes out. But if you're leveling and you're doing Slayer right now and you're into PvM, you're not going to use a tier 92 piece of armor on a Slayer task. It's just not feasible. Port's armor works well enough, I think, or even the tier 80 next stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, or Bandos. Yeah.
Or Bandos even. So
yeah.
Because of that, I think the people who you're going to get doing this are the people who are truly committed to making it, either because they're skillers or because they just want a high-end piece of Slayer armor. So I don't think it's too much of an issue that it doesn't degrade for this piece, because when you're thinking about it, yeah, I mean, I can see how it would be nice to add this to the set effect, so you would need to wear the full set to get the benefit. But if you think about it, the use case for this armor based on the top level PvM scene now, going to be for someone who is going tanking, or is it going to be for someone who is doing slaying and just wants to blitz everything? I think it's going to be for someone who's doing slaying or Reaper tasks and just wants to blitz everything.
Well, yeah, if you're tanking, you're going to use the Raids armor, right? The Ecto stuff, because then you get the Defender boost and all that. And
it depends. I mean, there's not really any place right now where Acto is used besides taking Yakamaru, like just the base tank for Yaka. That's the only place it's really used at this point. Sometimes people tank Beastmaster in it, but it's really and then high end Tellus. So Tellus over 1k in rage is where it's used also. But,
okay. But yeah, I have no problem with it. Tennis.
No, I don't have any problem with it either.
David?
Yeah, I think this should be as good as possible so skillers have a moneymaker, because that's sort of the point.
And, I mean, this is only for the customized armor, and if you sink that much into customizing it, it becomes untradeable.
Right, okay.
So you've made that decision, and you're keeping this armor. It is yours. Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
I don't think there's too much of an issue with it. You know, I think the bigger issue might be the actual set effect, because I don't like it splits the damage you get out into damage over time. And you and I were talking with this, is that it'll basically make tanking anything healable, right? Tanking what would be a one hit now healable in some cases.
It's gonna help me live, so
yeah, it'll help
cool
people
with that.
live. Yeah, it helps you live. I think it's even better in the case where the main way people die nowadays is when multiple things combo on you at once and you aren't able to out-eat it. And so I think this armor will basically prevent that from happening to you.
All right. So is there any case, and I'm playing devil's advocate now, is there any case in which the non-degrade of this armor is too powerful for Slayer or Reaper tasks?
Well, the Reaper task is more debatable because you could be bossing. So, for example, I don't really do Reaper tasks that aren't high-level bosses. But then again, it doesn't seem too powerful to me, really. Like I think it's fine. I think it's mostly fine. And plus, this is only for, again, this is just for when you've chosen to keep it, right? Through
the customization mode.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems fine to me.
And a task is like, what, an hour at most?
Yeah, I mean,
one instance.
The longest one is probably 8 Virago. So if you did all of them at hard mode, that's like 2.5 to 3 hours. But that's very limited. So, if you got the maximum possible Virago and you chose to do all of them at hard mode, then it's close to a 3-hour task. But for the most part, they're meant to be right around an hour. I think that's the intention with the balancing of it.
All right. So in general, no problem with this then. And, I think we're looking at it from the lens of the Slayer side of, or the skilling side of it. And I think when we have all three of us agreeing, given our different backgrounds here, I think that's a good case. So
yeah.
Nope.
Thank you for the question, Whitey. If you guys want to send your own in for next week, you can email them to questions@rsbnb.com, or you can find the forum topic at update.rsbnb.com/ask, or you can leave them on Twitter at RSBNB, either in a mention to us or as a direct message. Alrighty, so moving on to tech news before we wrap this show up, and we're going to keep in the gaming side of it this week. And Razer has announced something called the Soft Miner. For those of you guys wondering, this does have to do with cryptocurrency. So a bit of a rundown if you've been hiding under a rock for the last number of years. Basically, what cryptocurrency is that you have what's called the blockchain, and in order to receive a specific amount of cryptocurrency, you need to solve what's called a hash. And this is basically brute forcing a certain random number on the blockchain. And if your GPU manages to discover the correct number, you unlock that piece of the blockchain and you receive a bit of cryptocurrency in exchange. And that's what has caused the prices of GPUs to skyrocket over the last couple of years, so much so that mid-range NVIDIA GTX 1060 can be found going anywhere for around $400. So, right? Makes building new computers pretty hard. So Razer's taking advantage of this with something called the soft miner. And what this says is that you can get rewarded with Razer Silver for simply being AFK. And what this does is it installs a piece of software to your computer that utilizes your GPU and internet connection. And if you're not at your computer, it will use that and presumably allow your computer to be used in solving cryptocurrency hashes for Razer. But the catch is that you don't get any actual cryptocurrency for dedicating your computer to this. What you get instead is Razer Silver. And what you can do with this is you can use this to get discounts on the Razer store. And examples that are given to this are that, let's see, where's the catalog? Okay, so looking at the catalog here, you can get a Razer Death Adder mouse for 51,000 silver, or a Razer Chroma laptop stand for 140,000, or the Razer Huntsman Elite keyboard for 280,000. And there's other things too. You know, you can get discounts for clothing and whatnot. You can get discounts for Loot Crate and the like. And the idea behind this is that you can use these for basically furthering your own gaming addiction, let's just say in some cases, if you dedicate your computer to Razer. Now, there's no other way of putting this, but Razer's going to be making money off this. And in return, that's why they can give these discounts on the Razer products from the Razer store. Another one is that for $5,000, you can get a $10 discount on something from the Razer store as well. So, thoughts?
I wouldn't do it. I mean, and also, if you're going to crypto mine, if you're going to dedicate your computer to that, then why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you just go for
do
the
this?
money?
Yeah, exactly. Because I bet, you know, a Bitcoin you can probably buy a lot of Razer products. You know.
Yeah, but see, the issue is that to get anything substantive these days with crypto mining, you basically need to have, you know, one or two 1080s and have it running at full tilt, and that takes a lot of power. So I'm guessing the angle they're taking with this is that they want to provide a way for people to get something out of their hardware. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also the old 5th, 6th grade word problem from math where it's like, how many hours of that would it take to make up for the cost of those two things that you just mentioned? You know, that seems like it would be a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of people who have Razer products are going to see this in their Razer applications. They're going to go, oh, maybe I can get a bit of a deal off this and install it. But I think what's happening at the end of the day is that you're just going to be giving money to Razer for this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, it's smart on their part, but I don't know where they're going to find the suckers.
I mean, yeah, it is certainly smart. Apparently, it would take you 560 days to mine to get the keyboard.
Like 560 24-hour days.
Yeah.
For a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I bet you would get a lot more if you were just going for the currency.
If you were doing real Bitcoin mining. And that's a $200 keyboard.
Okay.
I mean, but isn't that stuff like $7,000 or something for one coin?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you dedicate enough to get those, or you mine a different kind of coin, not necessarily the Bitcoin, you can get fractions of it and whatnot too. Razer also says that these points expire 12 months after they're earned, so you need to spend them within a year, so you're not gonna get the keyboard.
Wow.
Oh, that's great. Not only are we screwing you, but we're actually going to tell you that we are.
And
on the plus side, you're making almost 1.5 cents an hour. So there's that.
Yeah.
Wait. So I don't really know that much about electricity prices, but does that offset the cost of electricity of just like turning your laptop off when you go to bed?
Yeah, probably not.
Not
and
a
you
laptop,
definitely
but a desktop,
just-
definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a desktop you would say costs more than 1.5 cents an hour to
Oh
run.
yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, okay.
I mean, I put everything to sleep when I'm not using it because it's running a 550 watt power supply and whatnot. So you don't want something like that on all the time.
Okay, so Razer is profiting off of you losing money.
Yeah, because you're paying for the power.
All right. Well, I guess it's like a cool scheme if you're into that.
Works globally. They also say that this will slow your computer down because it uses substantial amount of GPU power.
So you get a slower computer, you get to kick Mother Nature right in the balls, and you can't get a keyboard because it takes 500 and some days to do that.
Yeah.
So real
and that's
question,
on average.
though, is the potential money that they will lose from bad PR more than they will make off of this scheme, or do you think that there really will be a lot of people who do this?
I don't think there's going to be any bad PR that comes from this because, the regular media ain't going to be concerned about Razer. The people who use Razer gaming products and who don't know any better will just install it willingly, and it's only going to be us who is here telling people that this you're probably not getting a good deal doing this. Who won't? So
Okay.
If you're one of the first 5,000 people to sign up, you'll get 1,000 silver for free.
Ooh, 1,000.
I'm gonna actually install this and just run it overnight and see how much I get just for the hell of it. I'm not gonna do it regularly, but I just want to see what this has on offer here. So
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I want to see how much it can get over, say, 12 hours.
You could do that in your tech review.
Yeah,
like,
or
like
as part of the Informer.
Like just like a brief result.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
something like that.
What your results are.
And I mean, it's a way to, I guess, also trivialize crypto mining too, because crypto mining itself is kind of obtuse at the end of the day. So, all right, but yeah, be careful before you install the soft miner. It's probably not going to yield you any benefits in the long run, given the amount of energy you would need to put into it on power and whatnot.
Just random aside, if you do have a powerful computer and you don't mind donating some of your hours, I've always thought that the SETI project is cool.
Yeah,
I don't know how like if you're going to do something like this, that seems like
SETI
a
at
cooler
home,
way
it's called.
to.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I'd say I would be down with that.
Yeah. It's the same. It's the exact same process from a user perspective. It sounds like, but you're donating to a potentially, I don't know, at least maybe not a good cause, but just like something that's cool.
Yeah, it's a question if it's a good cause. Basically, what SETI at home does is, we have these big satellites and whatnot that listen to all the intergalactic background noise, and what SETI at home does is parses through all this noise to see if there's anything in there that resembles something intelligent. So
yeah, see,
if they discover alien civilization's rendition of the Spice Girls, then there you go. I don't know why that one first came to mind, but it did.
I mean, why not?
I mean, how else are we going to know when the Vulcans contact us, right, Shane? I mean, they're the first up, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can't be with the Vulcan if you don't get with their friends.
All right. Next up, Intel has released the details on its upcoming Sunny Cove CPUs. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting name. And, you might not ordinarily think too much about this, and you're wondering why this is in tech news. Well, it's been a while since Intel introduced new CPUs for the high-end systems out there, gamers and server workstations and the like. And for those who follow Apple, these will go into the iMacs and iMac Pros next year. But there's two big reasons why everyone should pay attention to Sunny Cove, as this is Intel's first 10 nanometer CPU architecture. So what this means is that every transistor inside of one of the Sunny Cove CPUs, and of course the transistor are the things that get charged up and they are used to store data and perform the calculations on the CPU in general, is that at a 10 nanometer process, it basically means that every transistor is around 10 nanometers in size. So what this does, it has two benefits. The first benefit is that you can stick more transistors on a chip, therefore getting more CPU power out of it. Or secondly, what you can do is you can use the same amount of transistors that you currently have for, say, a laptop chip, and the benefit will be that you'll be able to have the same performance and the same CPU power, but you'll generate less heat and therefore use less battery power. So that's the benefit of Intel moving down to the 10 nanometer process, which is something that people weren't sure if they'd ever get to, because as you get down to these small sizes of 10 nanometers and less, you start to have weird interactions happening from the quantum world. The laws of physics start to come into play with this, and that's a whole other podcast in itself. But the other reason why we're mentioning this is because these Sunny Cove chips are the first Intel chips that are hardware patched against the Meltdown and Spectre exploits that we talked about earlier in the year. So, of course, we have had Windows and Mac OS and practically every other operating system vendor under the sun patch their operating systems for Meltdown and Spectre earlier this year. But with these changes made to the Sunny Cove architecture for Meltdown and Spectre, this basically means that we won't have to have these software patches in Windows and Mac OS that some of them did actually reduce performance. So this is actually a good step forward for Intel, and this is a time when people who are looking to build new computers and whatnot, and who might not have wanted to because the architecture had been the same for a few years, or there was no actual physical hardware-based patch for Meltdown and Spectre, those people who are waiting for that can now look into this and start planning their CPU builds for 2019 going forward. So all in all, some good news from Intel. And we talked a lot about these bugs on the show earlier this year, and we mentioned that it would be into 2019 and 2020 before we start seeing fixes. Well, here we are. So,
Yep.
But, you know, the big story, I think, is the 10 nanometer process. I remember when we went down to 22 and 95 nanometers and whatnot, and that was a long time ago. And 10 nanometers seemed like it was theoretical at the time, but lo and behold, Intel is here, claims to have the process to do it. And it should be interesting to see where they go next, because I don't think they can shrink much further than 10 nanometers. So
That was what I was going to ask you. Like, what happens now? I mean,
two things happen after this. One, the microarchitectures, that is how the CPUs are actually built and how they're actually structured internally, changes to become more efficient, though still manufactured at the 10 nanometer scale. That's option one. Option two is to just add more cores to the CPU and tell all the software developers out there and the operating system developers, hey, it's time, adopt multi-core. Because, you know, the vast majority of the processes on your computer, like even your web browser, and this is going to be the biggest one, even RuneScape, I think, still only utilize one CPU core.
huh.
So it's going to be to tell developers, hey, move to multiple cores. Everybody has 2 cores now guaranteed. Most people have 4. People are going to start having 6, 8, 12, and so on and so forth. So those are the 2 ways that Intel can go, given the 10 nanometer barrier. So,
Okay.
yeah, I know. I personally would prefer they go the first route, because it's not always easy to think of where you can optimize for multi-core support when you're writing something like a web browser. It just needs to shift the way we think about things, and it's going to require some creative thinking, I'll say, even if I'm saying that, because I don't see a way you could make a web browser be more multi-core than it is right now, because you have multiple processes for each tab in your web browser. You have multiple processes for all the plugins, like the video running and whatnot. And those can already be put out to their own core. So making a web browser more efficient is something that probably can't be done. You're going to have to look and see what game developers do and whatnot. So it's an interesting time nonetheless. So.
All right.
And our last piece of tech news this week is not that hideous YouTube rewind video from last week, which became the most disliked YouTube video of all time, but is actually Google's 2018 year in search. We always cover these on the podcast, and basically what you can do is just head on over to google.com/2018, and you can have a look and see what exactly the popular searches were for that year. So let's have a look at some of these right now.
Isn't it always just the same thing, Shane? Free porn is number one?
No, that actually wasn't on the list this year.
What?
No, it wasn't.
I'll be damned.
So looking at the United States, the number one search in the United States was for the World Cup, followed by Hurricane.
What?
Yeah, World Cup.
What? Okay.
Hurricane Florence, Mac Miller, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, Black Panther, Mega Millions results, Stan Lee, Demi Lovato, and election results coming in at number 10.
Huh.
Yeah, so the World Cup was actually first in both searches and news in the United States. When it comes to
weird.
Yeah, when it comes to GIFs, the Fortnite GIF was number one.
Of course.
Default Dance GIF number 2, Dilly Dilly GIF number 3, Orange Justice 4, and Black Panther number 5. Movies: Black Panther, Incredibles 2, Deadpool 2, Avengers: Infinity War, and A Quiet Place. So, I think we're seeing the general trend here with what was searched for in the United States and whatnot. If we go globally, I think we'll see some similar results with that. Looking globally, it's still the World Cup is number one, both in searches and for the sporting events. Actors were Sylvester Stallone, Logan Paul, Pete Davidson, Bill Cosby, and Noah Centineo. So those were those. And movies, Black Panther, Deadpool 2, Venom, Avengers: Infinity War, and Bohemian Rhapsody. So that was global. And I'm just going to share some from Canada because, the Canadian ones are always interesting. The ones that started with how were, of course, number 1, how old is Prince Harry, of course, the royal who got married this year? How old is Dolly Parton? How old is Meghan Markle? How many medals does Canada have referring to the Olympics? And how many ends in curling, the Canadian ice sport? And then, of course, there was Canadian news and whatnot as well, which probably isn't interesting to many people and the like. But, of course, in international news was still the World Cup. And, of course, in Canada, the Winter Olympic Games, the royal wedding, the Florida school shooting, and Brett Kavanaugh topping off number 5. So that's what Canadians were interested in this year.
So were Canadians more interested in the royal family than the United States, or is that popular everywhere?
I think it's Canada because, we're a Commonwealth country.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Okay.
It's their peeps. That is the most Canadian list I could ever imagine.
It's like royal family, curling, Brett Kavanaugh's.
And Olympics.
Yeah. And the Olympics,
and Olympic
Winter
medals.
Olympics.
In terms of Canadian news, there was a hockey bus crash in April called the Humboldt Broncos, the Winnipeg Jets, the Ontario election, the Canada Post strike, and coming in at number 5, Tanis, cannabis.
Huh.
Ooh,
only 5, huh? I would have thought that would have been a big deal.
No, it was number 5 in general searches here. So, but
well, see, then no one even cared, so we need to follow Canada's lead.
But, just head on over to google.com/2018 and you can have a look at everything that was aggregated in terms of search. And what's more is you can also go back in history on here, so much so that you can go back to 2017 and all the way back. 2010 is not missing. I don't think they did one that year. 2009 and 2008. And then prior to 2007, there's not one there. But they had one for 2003, oddly enough. So, google.com/2018. Alrighty. So, wrapping the show up, we're going to talk about some other little things right now, including our December construction skill of the month, which, I mean, after last month, I can see why people don't want to compete in that, right?
Yeah.
I'll just say that Casper is well ahead with 8.5 million XP gained, and we'll leave it at that. Because, I mean, after double XP...
Construction rework win.
Oh.
Mm.
Oh, it's not happening, David. It's not happening.
But it should. Just literally port old school's construction rework. That's all you'd have to do. They literally made people's houses into max guilds. Like I don't know. Just like the construction over there is so good and so powerful. It's arguably too powerful, but like that's all that. It's all done. Maybe they have a problem with like copying them or something, but I don't know. We need a construction rework so bad.
All right. And, you know, it is also that time of year where I'll direct everyone to update.rsbnb.com/clips where you can send in your clips for the clip show that we're recording next week. So if you have any clips that you'd be interested in hearing on the clip show that you think we might not have got or we might not have missed or you think it should just be in there, please do include that. update.rsbnb.com/clips. We're gonna have lots of fun with that one. I think I always enjoy the clip show at the end of the year. So, all right, let's look at some of these achievements. So, what do we got?
Okay, so Nord of Falcon got 99 Slayer on the 12th of December. Dirtbout's New 99 ranged also on the 12th of December. Jamandi 52 with 200 mil Hunter. Was pretty incredible achievement. Good job. On December 11th. Guppy with 120 Magic on December 11th. Dirtbout's New again with 99 Invention on December 10th.
Nicely done. Next up is Murovec with 99 Cooking on the 10th as well. Sorensen 57 came in on the 9th with 200 million Farming XP and 200 million Constitution XP. Would have been something if that would have been construction as well. And Diocles got 99 Woodcutting on December 9th. And Skater Danman got 99 ranged on December 8th.
Nice. And following that up, we have Blind Man 0122 with 99 ranged on December 7th. Archie's with 120 Invention on December 7th. We have Rune Dragon with 99 Smithing on the 7th. We have Colette Coco 252 with 120 Dungeoneering. And Derp is back with 99. What we got here? Constitution. That was on December 6th.
But I think that's Code Lyoko, which is an anime from way back.
Code Lyoko? Okay.
Yeah.
From where?
I used to watch. It's an anime. I used to watch it all the time.
Oh, okay.
On Toonami, the section of Cartoon Network. I think it came back, but yeah, it was one of my favorite shows. Maybe 15 years ago or something like that.
That's a blast from the past, then.
Yeah, for me it is at least. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I've got a pick of the week, and this one will hopefully help some people out there if you're looking to get into the video editing side of things. For 11 more days and 13 hours from the time of recording, you can get the Sony Vegas Pro Humble Bundle, where if you pay $25, you will receive a copy of Vegas Pro 15, and basically what this is, for anyone who is unaware, is this is a professional level video editing piece of software for Windows, and it competes with Premiere and Final Cut from Apple, so it's definitely up there. You also get Vegas DVD Architect as well, and something called Hit Film Movie Essentials. I'm not entirely sure what this is, but these are all Windows pieces of software, so it doesn't really help me as I'm primarily focused on the Mac side here. But if you're a Windows user and you're looking for a very good video editing piece of software, this is something you should definitely pick up because, it's very hard, I find, to find a good video editing piece of software today on Windows that is, not necessarily too simple, but it's not, costing you an arm and a leg as well. So Vegas Pro 15 fulfills that in that it's a good video editor. And if you pay only $25 right now, you gain access to this video editor for that price. And you have 11 more days to do it. So it's something they always bring around for Christmas time and whatnot. And the Humble Bundle is always known for bringing these kind of things out. So link will be in the show notes at update.rsbnb.com if you want to pick this up. So
very cool.
Yeah. Anyone who uses Windows, I would recommend you pick this up if you're looking for a good video editor on the cheap these days. So
yeah, super cheap.
Alrighty. What have we been up to? Let's start with you, Tennis.
Well, I'm still recovering, so we're just been doing a little bit of divination, kind of just chill and relax and not cook. My buddy's like, "Dude, you're cooking again?" I'm like, No, I'm never cooking again. I didn't pay attention. I was on World 99. Like I said, that's the portable ranges. And they just saw that. They're like, "Whoa!" It's like, no.
Too soon, right?
Too soon. Yes, too soon.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, it's really been about it.
Okie dokie then. How about you, David? PvM wise?
Just been doing a ton of Solak. I've really started enjoying Solak a lot lately. And I'm not in a place at the moment where I really feel like I need money, so I've been doing as much Telos. A friend who I've been friends with for years, who we kind of learned PvM together at the exact same time, just came back to the game after like a 6-month break.
Oh, nice.
And so he and I have been doing a ton of Select together because he wants to get his IFB back and get the pet there, and so we've just been doing Select all day.
All right. And you also did mention in pre-show you were doing some old school as well.
Yeah. So I'm unfortunate, despite obviously high-level group PvM being my favorite, more and more of my friends are switching to old school each month, and the number increases from one month to the next. And so it's becoming harder to find teams for stuff. Fortunately, I have this friend to do Solak with, but if he stops playing or quits for some reason, I kind of want to have a leveled up old school account. And I've so far, it's only been a few days, but so far I'm really, really enjoying it. I found the community really friendly, and it's obviously very nostalgic. And I think that there are a lot of balance things that they've got right that RS3 could borrow from. Definitely RS3 is my favorite game, and I hope it ends up being more successful. But the way things are going, it almost feels inevitable that old school will be the more popular game, or will remain the more popular game.
That's some pretty big words there. And I mean, we see that we see that in the player charts too with mobile and whatnot. But that's a topic we could spend a whole podcast on.
Oh, for sure. And I hope it doesn't end up being the case, because I think I love the main game.
Yeah, and we said this with the needle skips is that you look at the needle skips, you look at the elite dungeons, and you look at any other headlining update from 2018, and that is RuneScape 3 at its best, and
absolutely.
People need to see it for that before they see it for anything else, and that is RS3. So that's a good point to leave that at. As for me this week, continuing the farming, continuing the herb farming and whatnot. Some divination gathering along the way, but you guys are going to chalk this up to my luck and whatnot. But yeah, I got the 3 breath traits sorted out, as well as the 3 shiny traits sorted out on my dragons. They bred twice,
beautiful.
And then I got my first royal dragon. It only took two tries.
Oh wow,
fantastic!
That is cool, man.
Yeah, I was expecting it to take longer, but it only took 2.
Well, there you go. Did you get your master farmer?
Yes, I got that a few weeks back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that was on the show that you weren't on.
Oh, that
the
that
Thanksgiving
must be that.
show. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was that. But now I'm kind of in the situation if I'm debating if I complete the rest of the breeding log, because I've never been really one to do the completionist things, and I'm kind of done with the farm at this point, except for, the ultra compost. So
Well, don't overlook those beans for double XP, right, Shane?
Yeah,
you can be the one 200 mil farming.
That's the reason I'm thinking I can keep the dragons going, because you don't necessarily need to claim the produce from them in the XP. You could just take the dragons out and sell them for the beans. So maybe I'll keep the dragons going. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But I swear that's going to come into play in the next farming skill of the month. So.
Nice.
But that's pretty much it for me. So I don't think there's anything else to say. You guys good?
I'm good.
David?
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Well, thank you for joining us then. It was good to talk a bit about PvM on this otherwise quiet week. So we'll be back next week to discuss Violet is Blue, amongst other things, the last regularly scheduled RSBANDB update of 2018, and we'll fill you in on what the Christmas schedule is going to be like. We got some pretty good shows lined up that we're going to get out over the Christmas break, so just wait till you hear those. Couple that I'm really looking forward to doing, ones I wanted to do for a while, so we're gonna have some fun over that break. But with that being said, if you want full show notes, you can find that at update.rsbnb.com. You can also join us in our friends chat, which is Bits Bytes in game. And if you, of course, want to check out that Patreon, that's at patreon.com/rsbnb. So with that being said, we'll see you next week, everyone, for Violet is Blue.
Take care.